Does it feel difficult to build your personal brand on LinkedIn today, with AI-generated content and people posting more and more every minute? Is it even worth it? I'm Stefania, CMO at Precis, and today, during this episode of Connecting the Dots, we're going to talk about thought leadership, leadership on LinkedIn, and how to build a personal brand in an authentic and consistent way, but also how to leverage your employees as internal creators to get the best outcomes for you and your company. This is Connecting the Dots. This is our podcast where we try to dig deeper into topics that we think our colleagues, marketers are interested in. So today I have with me David. David is the CEO of Precis Finland, but also a former CEO and founder of the F Company, a B2B marketing agency that joined forces with Precis around a year ago and rebranded into Precis just this year. And David, you have over 12,000 followers on LinkedIn, so you might not going to say it, but I'll say it. I think you're an expert on the topic, so I'm really happy to have you here. And what are you going to bring us to the table today? What's your unique perspective on the topic?
Morning, everyone. Really excited to be here. Thanks for the nice intro. Look, I do have 12,500 followers on LinkedIn. I wouldn't call myself an influencer necessarily. I think it's not a big enough amount for that, but I've been active on LinkedIn and building my personal brand for a number of years now, and I think it's allowed me to build cool things. As you've mentioned, I've built my agency from scratch to several million euros in revenue, and I sold it to Precis. And the funny thing is that Precis actually discovered me and my agency through our LinkedIn activity as well. And when we looked at the latest data, the thought leadership program that I've built has generated about 8 million euros in revenue, not leads, not kind of theoretical numbers, but actual revenue that came from our personal brands and the fantastic people that we have in our company, as opposed to the company brand itself. I get about 2 million yearly views on LinkedIn, and I'm posting quite regularly. I'm enjoying it.
Not bad. I would definitely call myself an influencer if I had 2 million views, but good. That's humble. And I have Göran from LinkedIn. I don't think we could have this conversation without you and without LinkedIn.
Thank you.
So you're head of Nordics for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions.
Yeah.
And of course, you're LinkedIn, but you've been at Google before, and you're also being a CMO yourself, which I think is really interesting. So what's your unique perspective on this topic?
I think my perspective goes back to two things. First of all, I'm trying to do what works for CMOs and for others, myself, as David mentioned as well, right? Trying, testing, figuring things out. I think that's one perspective. I think the other perspective, of course, I have the luxury in my LinkedIn role to talk to many companies, agencies who's trying to make this work. So I have the opportunity to learn a lot from others when they try what works and what doesn't work. And maybe the third thing is, of course, that from LinkedIn, we do quite a lot of research on these topics. So I have the luxury of also sort of having access to that research. So I think those 3 points is something I can bring to the conversation today.
So you're going to tell us how to hack the algorithm?
Well, the algorithm.
Okay, I'm joking.
But let's take that. But let's take it right away.
Okay.
I always talk to my colleagues. We all are looking for the algorithm room. We haven't found it yet. So there's no one working on in the algorithm. But I do think we can talk about some pointers, what seems to be working and not. And to be honest, it doesn't have much to do with the algorithm. It actually has to do what people care about.
Makes sense. Okay, so no algorithm for us today.
Not details.
Great. I think also one of the topics that we're going to talk about today is how you can be also a little bit, you need to get out of your comfort zone to build your personal brand on LinkedIn. I think that's the first rule. And we're going to talk about what that means and, how can you kind of live with that discomfort sometimes. Is there an example that you remember of, one time where you didn't want to post something and then eventually you did it and you were happy for it?
I think I have one at least, and I think it actually goes back to how I got my job that I have now. Because when my previous job that I had before this one, when that ended, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And it was also this phase, am I embarrassed of kind of sharing that I'm actually looking for a new job, what have you? But I kind of decided, said, okay, hey, I'm here. I know a lot of good things, but I need to tell the world about it. So I actually posted saying that basically I'm available, etc., etc. That's kind of one of the reasons that I also going back to David's story around how Precis found this agency, right? I was also found by LinkedIn indirectly via that, right? I shared that I'm available, I'm looking for new opportunities. And of course, that kind of was a bit of putting yourself out there, because of course it feels like a failure if you're not sort of happy where you are, right? Putting myself out there, and that's, I'm not sure if it took courage or not, but I did it, and it felt really good once I've done it.
And you got a new job.
I cannot
at LinkedIn. Not bad.
I cannot attribute everything to that, but it's part of it, just telling who you are and that you're available, right? That's both from a personal perspective, but the same goes for companies, of course.
Yeah, makes sense. And David, do you have an example?
I have lots of examples. You know how sometimes in the middle of the night you're lying wide awake and you're thinking about something that happened 10 years ago that was really embarrassing and you just can't get over it and you can't get any sleep. Like I have some of those moments, and one of them I actually recently shared on LinkedIn. I'm an entrepreneur. I build companies, and I started my first one. I was 16 years old, and at one point I abandoned a startup. It was a SaaS platform. Just as it was picking up, I was getting really cool customers, very well-known brands. And I abandoned it because I was afraid to admit that I had made a mistake in the financial model, right? I already had paying customers, but each customer was losing me money. And a simple solution would have been to go to those customers and say, look, I messed up, right? And in order for me to continue offering the service to you, you have to pay me more. We have to readjust the contract. I was embarrassed to admit it. And the only solution that I found at the time was to close the entire company down. And it was a shock to the system, to like my friends and business partners and followers. And for the next 10 years, I never talked about it to anyone because it was just such a stupid thing that I did. And I was so embarrassed of it. And getting it out on LinkedIn was actually a way for me to get over it and also get other people's encouragements and feedback that I'm not the only one who has done stupid things like that. So it's not easy, but it does get better with time. And I think I've also heard feedback from people that it made me seem a little bit more real and authentic.
I think the topic of being real it's really relevant today. And some people like you, David, you started many years ago with, your LinkedIn presence. But other people, such as myself, for example, I only started last year to post a bit more regularly. And I know there are other B2B marketers or marketers, they're a bit hesitant or they're not sure if it's the right time for them to start. And one of the reasons is because, of course, with AI, there's so much more content out there and it's so easy to produce content that it becomes a little bit of a challenge to understand, should I do it? And my question is, has AI made it too easy?
I mean, I can go first. The short answer, I think it's no. But of course, the nuances to it, of course, right? I think it's lowering the barrier for those people who are hesitating, right? It actually helps people. I mean, I also have writer's block and things like that from time to time, of course. And then it can actually be good to have a little sparring partner in the AI to help you find angles and what have you. So I do think it actually helps more than it sort of is a problem. And also think that, I mean, if you look at the research we're doing, 66% of the B2B marketers in Sweden, I mean, they believe AI will help to produce content better and faster. So I'm not alone. That's some comfort in that belief, right? And this is also the reason why, for instance, at LinkedIn, if you are a premium member, you get this little AI system to help you, to get you going, right? But with that said as well, of course, you need to be careful so it doesn't come like, okay, ChatGPT, write me 10 LinkedIn posts. Right, you need to think about what you want to say and put your personal perspective into it, because that's what's valuable. So I see AI as a help to get you going and maybe as a sparring partner sometimes. But you need to remember, you is you. So don't sort of shy away from that. That's my perspective. But I would love if you have any other perspectives, David, into it.
I do. Maybe because I'm not employed by LinkedIn. So I hope Göran doesn't hate me for saying this, but I'm going to be completely honest and say that AI has made my personal LinkedIn feed worse than it used to be. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I feel like I'm seeing a lot more content, of course, but you can clearly say that some of it has been written by AI with kind of zero input from an actual human. You see a lot of comments on those posts and on my posts as well that were written by AI, and they're adding zero value whatsoever, right? I don't want to be responding to those. I don't want to be seeing those because you can clearly see that the human touch was missing. So that part is there. But at the same time, I feel like it's a balancing act because LinkedIn, of course, is still the best place to build trust. It is still the best way to position yourself as an expert in the eyes of your dream customers. It's an amazing revenue channel. It has been for us and for many of our clients. So I do agree with what Joran has said. I think it's about bringing back this authenticity as a focus, treating LinkedIn as and thought leadership in general doesn't need to be LinkedIn as a conversation, like engaging deeply in the comments, talking to real people about their real issues, perhaps using formats that are more trust building, right? We have video, we have podcasts, we have photos that are perhaps harder to replicate with AI, and it just brings with it this degree of authenticity and trust. I would say that AI is a fantastic tool when it's used sparingly, when it's used as a creative partner and not this machine that produces 1,000 posts a day for you, because it can do that, but maybe it shouldn't. So executives need to show up consistently, authentically, not as influencers or creators. And that's why I said that I don't see myself as an influencer. I see myself as a human, as an entrepreneur, as a marketer who has a real voice and real experiences. And AI doesn't play a big role in that for me personally.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of a balance. And I mean, if you're building a brand, whatever the brand is, it needs to be authentic and it needs to have some distinctive elements, right? So we're talking about building a brand, a personal brand. So you can't really do that if you're just asking ChatGPT to write your own, entire LinkedIn feed. But I mean, David, you must use AI in some shape or form.
So it was about 2 years ago when ChatGPT just came out. I wrote a post that became quite controversial where I said that I don't use AI for my LinkedIn content. 2 years later, I can still say that I almost never use AI for content. And the only times that I use it is to sharpen the content that I've ever written, right? So I don't use it to create anything new. I don't use it to repurpose. And I have a very clear reason for that. To me, writing is a fundamental marketing skill. It's been critical to me as a B2B marketer. It's been just massive for me as an entrepreneur. It helps me think clearly. It helps me simplify very complex concepts, generate new ideas. And I don't want to rely on AI to do all of my thinking for me, because then I feel like I would lose the learnings and the kind of the sharpening process. There was a research just a few months ago by one of the American universities that students who relied on AI lost some of their thinking ability compared to students who didn't. So I don't want to be one of those people.
I understand. I think I also don't use it much, but I do use it. For example, I'm not a native English speaker, right? So I could write really confidently in Italian, but I write confidently 99% of the time in English. So I do use ChatGPT to make sure that I don't make mistakes, for example, right? But David, you also mentioned some of the formats, and I would really like to ask you, Joran, what do you think? Because of course, you have your own personal brand, but also you see a lot of other CMOs and professionals trying to build their own personal brands and without sharing any data. Yeah. But what is that? What is working today? Is it video? Is it pictures? It is.
And the short answer, I mean, we have some data actually on it as well. It's video. Right, that's actually what is cutting through now, because we see increasing on posts. I think it's 34% year on year is on video. Engagement is kind of through the roof. And also, if you ask CMOs in the research we do, I think short form video is number one, what actually works. So video, that's a short answer. But I also think this goes back to, the challenge with video is, you mentioned that in the beginning, right? Is that, well, now we're sitting here doing things on video. Yeah. Of course, that's also good, something pushing yourself a bit out there, right? And that's the next step, right? Yeah. Is pushing yourself out there. And I think that's going to be the frontier, right? Being that authentic, as you mentioned, David, push yourself out there, but also communicate in a medium that people want to consume. Yeah. Which, to be fair, for most people is video.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right?
I have a question about that, actually, because we have an opportunity to ask someone from LinkedIn how it works. Obviously, video is a fantastic format in terms of trust and authenticity. I have to say I've been playing with it for quite a bit, and I know a lot of other content creators who have. Something that we've all noticed is that the engagement sometimes tends to be less than you get from, photo posts or text posts. but maybe the quality of that engagement is higher, right? It's one thing to skim through someone's text post, and it's another thing to spend 30 seconds of your life listening to a person, a real person, share their real experiences. So what would you say about that? You know, if are engagement numbers comparable between video and the other formats, in your opinion?
I wish I had all the data with me, but I can make an educated guess on it, right? And I would say that I think we are still better at doing written content. Right? We're better on that. I think it's easier to be precise, because this was a different way of communicating, right? You do written content versus video. So I think we're still learning a bit on the video side, and also as you said, right? I think it's also much easier just to click like or something on a written post, but the video it kind of requires more investment of your time. So my assumption, at least, is that the engagement is not as visible in maybe in metrics, but it's higher than on written content.
It's a better kind of engagement.
It's a better kind of engagement, but also, I think that's one piece. But I think the other piece as well is that, I mean, especially in B2B, right? The decision makers that are coming into B2B now, they've grown up with TikTok, Instagram, what have you. That's how they consume things.
Yeah.
That's simply what they do. So I think if we want to speak to them, we need to speak to them in a way that they are used to, right?
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, because I think many people that are on LinkedIn, they're a bit, I would say more like older generations. They often say, or LinkedIn now, it looks like Facebook or it looks like TikTok. But the reality is just like, well, that's how people are consuming content. And that's how people are, you know, producing content as well. So I think it kind of just makes sense that each platform is evolving in a way.
Clearly, that's what is being consumed more. So it's clearly what people want. And as a marketeer, right?
Yeah.
Giving people what they want. Sometimes we need to explain that they want it or need it, but giving something that actually fulfills a need, that's our job.
Yeah, makes sense. And what you said before is that, of course, video or pictures, it's much easier to hide behind a written post than behind a picture or a video, right?
Yep.
And I think many B2B marketers or marketers professionals, they might feel like it's a bit difficult to get out there, it's a bit awkward. And I think I told you during the prep call, Maria, who is in charge of content for Precis, she said, oh, but that's cringe. And I mean, she's much younger than we are, so she's a different generation. I was like, no, I don't think so. But why do you think that's maybe what some people might think?
By the way, that's the same comment I get from my kids, but on my post as well. You need to stop doing that because it's too cringe. That's what they're telling me. But I think it goes back to the message or the content, actually, because if you just create content or post for the sake of posting with generic things, of course that feels awkward and maybe not you, right? But if you have something to say and you want to share a perspective, and then it's valuable. Right? Then it's not cringe if you're actually helping someone learn something, get the perspective. So I think we sometimes sort of undervalue our own knowledge and contribution. So I think it's more about undervaluing that than that it's cringe. It can be cringe, of course, but I think it more comes back to that, how we think about ourselves, to be honest. Because I mean, David said earlier, it's important to have that point of view. Completely agree on that, because that point of view will add value to someone. Yeah. At least, right? It won't be cringe for that person.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel the same. Like, I post quite a bit about being a mom because that changed my overall persona at work as well. And some people might feel like, oh, that's a bit oversharing or it could be cringe or whatever. But then you have people reaching out and saying, oh, I'm a dad, and it's really refreshing to read that, you know, you don't wake up every day at 5 a.m. and start, you know, doing Pilates or whatever that is, right? Because you have a small child. So I think that's really, I mean, it's nice to get those connections as well.
I agree. And also from a professional life, right? I think I've noticed something that is personally for myself the last couple of months. There's more and more people actually talking about the challenges of working too much, burnout and things like that. And I think there's a lot of people can relate to that. And that's, of course, is that cringe or not? At least I think a lot of people relate to it. Yeah. And this also helps us develop as persons, right? And David, I think, is trying to say something here. So
Sorry.
I completely agree with what you guys said. I mean, if you create content that is valuable to your audience, if it speaks to their pain points, it's never going to be seen as cringe. And if your teenage daughter thinks it's cringe, she's probably not your audience as well. Not yet. So something that, Stefania, you said that was interesting is, why does it feel so difficult to start? I feel like everything that actually makes an impact is usually difficult to start. So if it feels difficult, if it feels hard, if it feels like a challenge, maybe it's a thing worth doing.
True, very true.
Yeah, and if not, I think we had actually the conversation the other day, you and I, actually on LinkedIn, around sort of going outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And doing that is at least that you learn something, right?
Yeah.
At least it's good for you, all right? And then you learn and you get feedback. Then you realize if it's good for others or not.
Yeah, makes sense. And not everyone might want to do that, but most people have something unique to say. So it's also nice to have a place where that can happen. But I mean, this is all very nice and very romantic and dreamy and so on. But of course, there's an element of building your own personal brand because you have something to say, you want to have a network, or you really believe in a cause or in a topic. But there's also another element that is you as a professional, as a marketer, you know there's a business impact, right? You know you can actually get maybe leads or revenues, or, you know, you could build up your entire agency like David did. So there are many ways to go about that. And I feel like many marketers, they know there's a value in that specific way of using LinkedIn. And I think I would really love for you, David, to share a little bit about why did you start with LinkedIn when you built the F company? You could have done many different things, right? But then you said, okay, let's bet on LinkedIn, on this channel. How did you do that? Why? And where did you see like that having actually an impact?
I got to be honest with you. I think it also comes down to my personal background, right? So I moved to Finland as an immigrant with no money, no network, no language skills, no anything. And because I had a lot of marketing experience, like I said, I started my first business at 16. I felt like starting an agency and adding value to Finnish and Nordic companies could work out. And it did in the end, but I didn't have any way to promote myself or my business. So the bet that we made and the bet that I made was on being really strong and really focused and really visible on one or two channels and ignoring everything else. So for the first couple of years, all we did was organic LinkedIn and then events and webinars. We didn't do SEO, we didn't do search, we didn't do paid social, we didn't have any money to do that. We did no outbound. I had never in my life picked up a phone and called anyone, sales call-wise, right? And that bet paid off because we got really good at what we were doing. We started growing our audience. Our audience enjoyed the co-creation process in a way because they could see us building our agency from scratch and get better and better at what we do. And then people started coming to us saying, look, guys, I believe what you believe. Let's work together. So for us, that bet was something that paid off big time in the end. And of course, look, if I were to start the same thing now, I would have the resources, the connections, the money, perhaps the budgets to start with more channels to begin with. But back in the day, LinkedIn was the channel that was free to us, and all it cost us was our time, commitment, and creativity.
Yeah, as you said, maybe now you would also have other channels, but we do work with a lot of clients where you guys actually provide frameworks to create this, let's call it internal creators program, or we actually have one at Precis. It's called Project Spotlight. We're part of it and it's led by David and some other colleagues. But that's also something we develop for clients, right?
Yeah.
So we feel like that's something that's still valuable. Could you maybe share some tips on how you could structure that kind of program for a company that's interested to explore how to build their own personal brand as a marketer, but mostly like how to leverage employees to get that kind of specific commercial outcomes?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like you said, the F Company's thought leadership program then became Project Spotlight. And at one point, we realized that we have a playbook that works. We've done this. We've made money with it. We've grew a business with it. How about we start offering to our clients? And now we have a playbook that we're implementing with a number of our clients from small SaaS startups to multi-billion euro corporations. And we're learning. It's been an interesting process. And what I would say is that building a thought leadership program is very much a two-way street. The company, of course, can and should provide a framework. It should give the support. It should give perhaps the tools and the training that the people need. But it's the thought leaders that bring with them the thoughts, right? The unique point of view, the motivation to stay consistent and keep doing it. And the companies that I've seen do a fantastic job at it, like Dream Data, for example, the Danish SaaS company, are the ones that built a thought leadership program that comes from the top down, right? So they have incentives, they have rewards and friendly competitions internally. They have very clear KPIs that are connected to business metrics. For example, they're looking not just at engagement, but they specifically want to engage the target accounts. So for them, their thought leadership program is part of their ABM motion. The ultimate objective for them is not just to get likes and clicks, but they look at qualified pipeline that was generated by organic social. And the last time I spoke to the guys at Dream Data, they generate a couple of million euros a year in organic pipeline. And they get about 1 million organic impressions a month, from what they do. So when there is a program that the company provides and the commitment from the participants to take part in that program, I think the results can be quite spectacular. And I'm a massive believer in the fact that a thought leadership program can be your primary revenue driver in your company.
Yeah, well, that's definitely was the case for you and the F company.
David, I'm curious. What do you think is sort of the driver of getting people to be engaged in that program? Because I think that's kind of many customers I meet, at least, that's kind of what they're trying to figure out, or how to get people engaged and want to be part of such a program, to create that pull and not the push. What's your experience on that?
That is a key question here. And I've built, I want to say, 10 or 12 of these programs for different companies. And I see the same trend every time. There's a lot of people who are engaged from day one, but then you come in 1, 2, 3 months later, and you will see that half of them dropped off. So what I noticed that's in common between the companies that do it right is that not only do they provide the support, but they also choose the kind of people to participate in the program who, A, have a strong point of view, so they have something that's valuable to say, and then B, they have a strong internal motivation to continue doing it. So they have a clear why to participate in the program. And companies that do it right, they usually frame it not in terms of doing PR for the business, but in terms of a career growth opportunity for the executives and the other participants in the program. Because when you think about it this way, when you switch jobs, and most of us will tomorrow or 5 years from now move on to a different company, when you switch jobs, the only thing that's really left with you is the reputation that you've built. It's how many people in your peer network see you as an expert. And then when you position it as an opportunity to become more well-known, to boost your career, and we as a company will support you in doing that, we'll give you the resources and dedicate time towards doing that, then it becomes something that people get behind much easier. It's something that motivates you on a personal level. And the people who tend to stick with the program the longest is the ones who understand why they're doing it. Some are doing it for the money, some are doing it for career opportunities. Maybe they want to sell more, maybe they want to be getting speaking engagements and invited to podcasts. But when the going gets tough, it's those people who remember why they're at it are the ones who are going to persevere.
Yeah. And I remember when we started the Project Spotlight, at the very beginning it was a bit of a soul-searching exercise for us that were part of it. So David basically asked everyone to kind of, decide what were the pillars or the topics or the kind of internal values that were important for us. And that gave us, me and many other people still part of the program, motivation to keep going, because it's not just about the company. It's not about Precis. It's about us as individuals. But I also have another question, because as a CMO, sometimes we do wonder, okay, is it easier to maybe create an internal creator program where you need to rely on your own employees and, they need to have certain motivation? Or would it be better to maybe just spend some money and have a B2B influencer program instead? What do you think? What would you recommend?
And there's not an easy yes or no answer to that question, of course. I do think that when we're trying to get the authenticity, and people trust people, right? That's the foundation we're trying to get to here. Mm-hmm. And I think that the first step should always be to try to see if you have people internally. Because especially in kind of tech-heavy companies and what have you, there's always this expert that knows exactly like a little process, a little tech thing that is super relevant for the customers, right? So if you can get that person to engage and talk about products, what they're doing, research, what have you, that is so valuable. So I would always go there first. But to your question, all right? I mean, if you find that's too hard, of course, I mean, the rise of the B2B influencer is not the rise. It's not anything. It's happening, right? We have people talking about building their professions around being knowledgeable around certain topics. So of course you can utilize them, right? Because at the end of the day, I think what this is about is that, I mean, when we do our research, 57% of the B2B marketers, for them, thought leadership is no longer optional. They have to do it, right? So they need to figure out a way to do it. So if you are stuck internally, why don't go out and try an influencer or some sort of collaboration? Maybe that also will trigger people internal to say, hey, we can also talk about this. Yep. Sometimes you need to push and pull a bit and figure that out to get people going as well.
Makes sense.
So I think explore influencers, absolutely, if you kind of cover your own basis first.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about what you should be looking at when you have either like a creator program or even at your own profile, right? David talked a lot about, of course, pipeline and leads. Eventually, that's what we would like to see as, as CMOs, but also from a personal perspective, what else should we be looking at to actually say, oh, this is working, it's going in the right direction? David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what's really important and something that I've seen a lot of success with is when you start with a pilot first. Right? When you come in and you bring all of your company into the program and you expect life-changing results a week from now, that's just not going to happen. Everyone will get disappointed and quit doing it. So we typically suggest starting with, let's say, a 6-month experiment with clear goals that are tied to company KPIs, right? And if you reach those targets, if you see those signals, this is when you start scaling it. So then back to your question of what those signals could be. What I typically suggest is building a mix of short-term, mid-term, and long-term metrics that will help you stay on track and guide you in the right direction and prevent you from getting discouraged when you don't see instant sales from the post you made on LinkedIn yesterday. So in the short term, what we typically look at Precis and also with our clients are things like engagement for the content and whether you're reaching the right companies, the right titles, and the right people. If your content is engaging, if people are commenting, liking, sharing, and spreading the word, that's already a good indicator that whatever you're saying is resonating, it's valuable to your audience. Then in the midterm, we start looking at things that are perhaps a little bit stronger. We're looking at organic traffic, we're looking at the audience growth, especially for your executives, which can translate to a lot of money down the road. And we start looking to attributed leads that came from thought leadership content. And then, of course, in the longer term, we start looking at things that you can actually take to your CFO. We're looking at revenue, we're looking at qualified pipeline, we're looking at very concrete sales feedback. When you sit down with your sales team on a monthly basis and they tell you, look, the accounts that we're targeting keep mentioning that they see our content everywhere, not coming from our brand, but from the people who work for us. Then there's things like media mentions and invites to speak at events and podcasts. Like all of that is something that many of us take for granted, but that's a direct outcome of the programs that we run. So then the real secret is to take those metrics, the different types of metrics, and combine them together into a mix that works for you and your business, and then use that mix as your ammunition to convince the CFO at the end of that pilot to scale, operationalize, and invest more into the program.
Well said. I have a very personal to me question. How do you get your CEO to post more on LinkedIn? No, because I need to know. Is there any secret?
Look, that's a question that I get a lot. And I think CEOs typically tend to respond to financial incentives and company growth and revenue and profit. And there's a lot of case studies out there. Like we are a case study. We have clients that have been successful with this. There's companies like Dream Data, for example, who are public about how well they're doing, where there is a very clear correlation between a thought leadership program and then the bottom line of the company. So if your CEO is not excited about making more money and growing the business, then perhaps they should consider a different job, right? Because that's their primary
Change your
motivator.
profession.
Exactly. So that's obviously the main thing. And there is a lot of material out there that can help you build a case.
If I may build on that, I think there's maybe a few more nuances than money to it as well, right? And I think reference points, what I think is sometimes very powerful. And when we work with different customers, we just show what do other CEOs do, because these people, they keep track on each other, right? They want to be the biggest, the best as well, because they're most
big egos.
They're at least competitive. I mean, to drive a business, you need to have some sort of competitive feeling in you, right? So comparing to others is quite powerful, especially in their industry, I would say. And I think the CEOs that I meet with who are active, they always talk about, oh, that other person did that, and I saw that, and how did that work? What are the tricks and what have you? They want to be there, and I think the data also speaks for itself, right? I think we've seen a 23% increase in CEOs being active on the platform, and we also see an increase of 39% in followers for those CEOs. So people clearly want to actually listen to what they have to say and want to engage with it. And I think the other piece as well is that while a CEO's ultimate job might be to deliver financial results to its shareholders, right? Being a leader today is so much more than only driving financial results. I mean, communicating with different kinds of stakeholders, yes, shareholders, but also current, future employees, customers, what have you. That's part of your job, actually, to be that kind of figurehead for the company.
Absolutely.
So being active on a platform like LinkedIn is quite a handy tool to do that job as well. And so I think there's many reasons, but I think this, going back to what I said in the beginning, give examples. People actually do it, right? And ideally in their industry, of course, because especially if you work with more traditional companies, I mean, if you bring up the Dream Data example, might not fly with an industrial company, for instance, then you need to have a couple of those examples in your back pocket. And if in automotive, you bring up Maribara from GM, you need to figure out those examples. That to me has been maybe one of the biggest triggers, actually, to show that others are doing it.
Yeah. And what you said also, of course, LinkedIn can also be a great tool for internal communication. Like we see at Precis, most of our organic posts and most of my posts, and I guess of the leaders of the organization, are seen by our employees, which is a great way for us to communicate about certain things. And I think that's something that maybe often CMOs that are in more like B2C industries don't see or don't think about. Or maybe it's just easier for us in B2B to think, oh, LinkedIn is the place to be. But is LinkedIn also relevant for B2C CMOs and leaders?
I think that for me, I think, and from this perspective, is that marketing and communication, the principles are the same, whatever company industry you're in. But you have some people you want to talk to, you want to get the message out to them. So it's about finding, where do I find these people, where can I talk to them in an efficient way, without having an additional waste and what have you. So I think I take on my sort of B2C hat in my previous job before this, when I was the CMO for a B2C company. And of course you have stakeholders that's easy to think about on LinkedIn, right? Of course, shareholders, employees, future employees, and what have you, right? But also customers. But with customers, I think it's more around finding that, where do you find your audience and being efficient with it. I mean, on LinkedIn, for instance, is LinkedIn the perfect platform for broad, cheap reach? No, I'll say that any day, right? But if you have a specific target group they want to reach without waste, it's really, really good. And we, for instance, see that B2C companies that have premium products, they tend to do well, like automotive brands, the premium brands, luxury brands, things like that. They tend to do really, really well because they have a very specific target audience that they want to reach, and they can do that on LinkedIn. But as I said, if you want to buy cheap CPMs, well, there are other platforms who can do that better, to be honest. But if you want reach and engagement from a very specific target audience, it usually works really well for B2C as well.
Exactly.
David.
I completely agree with that. At the end of the day, LinkedIn is a marketing channel, and it's a channel that allows you to target your audience in a very specific way. And at the end of the day, like Göran said earlier, people buy from people they know, they like, they trust. So LinkedIn is also a fantastic channel for many B2C brands that might be targeting, a professional working audience, for example. You've brought up automotive, you've brought up maybe some technical products, and all of them are brilliant, I think. Brilliant products to be promoted on LinkedIn. And I have personally, the latest car that I chose and the dealership that I chose to deal with was because I've gotten to know and trust the people that I follow on LinkedIn. And that's a very concrete example. But of course, what Stefania mentioned before, LinkedIn is also a brilliant internal communications channel. And of course, if you're a CFO, a CEO or a CMO of a B2C company, you still have employees, and most of them will be on LinkedIn. And it's a great way for you to communicate the future of the industry, where your company is going, the values that you personally believe in and you want to instill on the rest of your company. And that's a really good channel to do it. So I wouldn't draw a strict line between B2B and B2C. And I would just see LinkedIn as a marketing channel and a brilliant place to build yourself up as a thought leader, regardless of what industry you work in.
Nice. Thank you. Now I have a few quick questions for you, so you don't have any time to think about it. It's a 5-round, so fast and short answer. Göran, I'll start with you. Best performing format right now on LinkedIn?
We said it before, it needs to be video.
Good. David, what's your go-to content ritual?
Oh, wow. I have a notebook that's right next to me here, and I write down content ideas whenever they come to me. I carry this everywhere. Client meetings, team meetings, whenever there is a challenge or a problem or a pain point, I write it down. And then when I have my slot booked for content creation, I just open this. It's full of ideas that I can turn into content.
Okay. One principle that's not negotiable in thought leadership today?
I think you need to have a point of view and be authentic.
Nice. Göran is doing much better on being short and to the point here, and David? Good. Last one. David, who is your favorite LinkedIn creator today?
Dave Gerhardt by far. He's in B2B, amazing content, and stays authentic.
Nice. Like him too. Nice. Okay. So, well, we talked a lot today about different topics around how to build your personal brand, internal creators, and so on. What would be your one tip to CMOs or marketing professionals that want to start building their personal brand today in this new AI overcrowded world?
You go first, David. It gives me time to think.
There's a quote that I think gets attributed to a lot of different people, but I love it nevertheless. And it goes like this: work like hell and advertise. One doesn't work without the other. You can be the best in the world at what you do, but if the world doesn't know you exist, then what's the point? And that's my advice to people who are building companies, building their personal brands. Do a great job and make it visible.
Nice.
I think to build on that, I think do it, get started, because you won't know what's going to work fully until you do it. And this also goes back to also another point of research that we have, right? I think 53% of CMOs are saying that they spend too much time on strategy or slow decision making. So get going and do it. Because, I mean, hey, you might do things that you didn't think would work, and it was perfect, and you will also fail. Right? So be prepared to fail, but start and do it.
Nice. Yeah, with most things, I guess. Nice. Thank you both for this really interesting conversation. I think what I can take home with me is definitely a lot of tips around how to get started. I think I really like how we talked about that it takes a little bit of courage to put yourself out there, but you can have amazing results, not just in terms of commercial outcomes, but also in terms of connections and building your own personal brand and maybe being an ambassador for what you believe in. Video is the way to go on LinkedIn today, so which is great because that's more difficult to fake. And then, of course, there are many ways to build that brand for yourself and for your company. There's internal creator, B2B influencers. Let's start with internal creators. David and the team, they have amazing frameworks there. So, yeah, I hope I didn't forget anything. Thank you so much. Really insightful. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.
It was a fun conversation.